As the SME user responsible for invoicing, you will need to find the service orders that are ready to be invoiced and convert them to an invoice. We are currently in the Service and Install module with Service selected. Depending on the process you and your team set up, you may find the orders that are ready to be processed by searching closed orders and even sorting by order status to find the closed orders that are ready to be invoiced. Double-click on the order to open. In the Service or Install order, you will see a field for invoice type. Let's go over the various types of invoices available. Combined invoice is the default invoice type for service and install orders. If you convert a service order to a combined invoice, the entire order is converted to an invoice, and the items on the invoice cannot be edited in the invoice. Here is the combined invoice. You can add additional closed service and install orders on the combined invoice. Another type of invoice you can use is the itemized invoice. If you convert a service order or install order to an itemized invoice, all the items are duplicated on the invoice for further editing. This provides more flexibility in changing the invoice after the invoice is created. Here is the itemized invoice with an Order Items tab, just like the service or install order. Selecting the invoice type of partial allows you to select individual items on the order to include on the invoice. Generate multiple invoices for the order until all items on the order are invoiced. When generating a partial invoice for an order, the Invoice Order window will open. Here you can select which items you want to include on the invoice. At the bottom of the window, you will see the remaining total to be invoiced. Click OK and the first invoice will be generated. The type of invoice generated is an itemized invoice. Here we see on the itemized invoice the items that were included on this partial invoice. Let's go back to the service order and invoice the remaining items. Click Actions, Generate Invoice. Check the remaining items and click OK. All items are invoiced and the order changes to invoiced. We'll jump to the invoice, and on the itemized invoice that was created, we can go to the Order Items tab and see the final items invoiced. If you choose the invoice type of fixed total on an order, you can enter a fixed amount for the material, labor, and services. When you choose fixed total invoice type, SME adds an additional tab called Fixed Rates. You enter in the fixed rates for labor, material, and services, and the generated will use this amount, not the itemized amount based on the labor, material, and services added to the order. To invoice the order, click Actions, Generate Invoice, click OK, and the invoice generated is an itemized invoice. The two last invoice types are % of total and dollar amount. Be careful when using these types because there may be issues with rounding and the amount converted to the invoice may not be exact. When generating an invoice for an order with % of total invoice type, you'll be prompted to enter the % of the balance you want to convert. I'm invoicing 80% of the order for the first invoice. And notice the order changes to partial invoice. To generate the remaining portion, click Actions, Generate Final Invoice, and the order is fully invoiced. When generating an invoice for an order with dollar amount invoice type, you'll be prompted to enter the dollar amount you want to convert to an invoice. SME will allow generation of multiple invoices based on the dollar amounts. It will keep track of how much has been converted towards the total. This first invoice I generated was for $1,000. To invoice the remaining amount, click Actions, Generate Final Invoice. The order changes from partial invoice to invoiced. Another way to create an invoice is to go directly to the Receivables module, Invoices. Click New, and you can create a new combined invoice or itemized invoice. Again, the combined invoice will allow you to select a billing company and then add closed service and install orders for that billing company to the invoice. If you click New Itemized Invoice, you will first select the billing company. Then the invoice looks just like a service or install order. Simply add the items to the invoice on the Order Items tab. If you are adding material to an itemized invoice, your inventory manager still needs to make sure they are allocating stock to the itemized invoice, the same way they would with a service or install order.